Hello everybody. Looks like my webcam isn't there, which is fantastic. Today has just been a bit of a struggle trying to get this stream started. Let's see if I can get another webcam in there. That does not seem to be working. Well, it was working 2 seconds ago, of course. This is the joys of working with technology. Excuse me. Well, unfortunately, let's see if I can get an image up there right now, since I don't seem to be able to get my webcam up. Just a moment. Let me see if I can just remove this. And then try to get something up, and we'll start talking about what we're here to talk about today, which is the day one adventures, and we'll get that in just a moment. So hopefully some of you had the opportunity to play through the Up the Creek quick start over the weekend. If you did, let us know in the chat how that went for you. And once again, I'm trying to get a little picture up here, since I don't have my webcam seems to have decided it's not going to work after my computer crashed, and we're running 30 minutes behind on this, so I apologize for that. Today was just not my day for the computer stuff. Let's see, here we go. Here's a little picture of me. So, part of our stay at home and play initiative is Torg. This week, or this month, I guess, we're doing Torg, and so you can go check out the Torg website. If you go to torgeternity.com, it'll take you right to back to our main Ulisses page. But we've also got stay at home and play Torg Eternity post. And in this post, we're giving out the Up the Creek quick start, so you can check that out. The drama deck, there's a token for you to use, and all these are available at Pay What You Want. So if you've got some funds, you want to help us out, you can do that. If not, totally understand. We just want you guys to be able to play. So there's a bunch of adventures to play. We highlight some Infiniverse Exchange stuff, and we highlight the how you can play on the virtual tabletops on Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds. And today I'm going to be adding some stuff. I haven't added it yet, but you are going to be the first to hear that we are adding the day one adventures. So you can get this day one adventures right now at again, Pay What You Want. Suggested price is $14.99, but pay what you want. And this is gonna have it's everything. It's several adventures. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 adventures for Torg Eternity, and we're gonna kind of go over them a little bit. We're gonna go over them maybe once a week. We'll go over a different adventure. Included is also the GM screen and archetypes. So this has the full archetypes, the beta archetypes. And then there's also, it looks like I didn't pull it up, but there's also, there are the day one characters, and those have always been free on their website to download, so you can definitely get those still. But here's some of the day one archetypes, and they're day one because they don't have a clearance level, so they're sort of like basic characters. But they're great to go through these adventures. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get looking at it. So it looks like this includes all these adventures. So there's an introduction which we're going to read right now. Then you have Isle, Living Land, And all these adventures look like they're pretty beefy adventures. Altogether, it's 146 pages. For example, the Isle starts at 40, it goes to 60, so it's a 20-page adventure. So they're all decently sized adventures. And as you can see, they kind of gives you different acts and scenes. So here we go. So day one is basically like what happened during Core Earth on the day that all of the Maelstrom bridges came over and all of the invading cosms came. So let's get reading. The Day 1 adventures are meant to serve as an introduction to the game mechanics and unique realms of Torg Eternity. All across the world, the villainous possibility raiders have invaded Core Earth. Where they stand, the laws of reality bend to resemble where they land, the laws of reality bend to resemble the strange worlds they came from, known as cosms in Torg Eternity. Each adventure is set within the first 24 hours of the coordinated attack. The Isles all start as normal people caught in the overwhelming chaos and confusion of each invasion. However, these characters are fated to face a moment of crisis and become Storm Knights, powerful heroes who fight back against the possibility raiders and their High Lord masters. As each adventure progresses, the heroes may learn more about their dreaded foes and how they operate. Padre in the chat says LL and Isle are multi-act, the rest are single act. No, it's good to know, yeah. I just kind of went over those quickly. So learning the game. Throughout these adventures, the text calls out examples of relevant rules, insight into how to use them, and tactical advice for the players. Advice directed specifically toward a new GM appears like this to set it apart from the regular text that's like bold and indented a bit. All the advice is meant to help a group learn the game, not enforce a single way to play it. The most important rule of the game is to have fun. Keep in mind if a piece of advice conflicts with the GM's or group's style. Keep that in mind if a piece of advice conflicts with the GM's or group's style of play. It's worth noting that while Day 1 adventures are a useful introduction to Torg Eternity, they are atypical in a few crucial ways. In a normal Torg Eternity game, the adventures follow the continuing exploits of a band of Storm Knights created by the players and drawn from one of many different realms. Each of the Day 1 adventures, on the other hand, features a cast of pre-generated characters who hail from Core Earth. The characters for each adventure are different to the Storm Knights, so Storm Knights don't have much chance to earn XP or gain power. This is the arrival of a Maelstrom bridge signals doom for everyone nearby. That is a pretty freaky piece of art there. It's like a tornado of bodies. Suggested order. Each invasion begins within hours of the others. Most of the events are roughly concurrent. The adventures aren't chronological, but instead placed in an order that highlights different aspects of rules as they apply to the style and mood of each cosm. The adventures may be played in any order desired, but there are a few things to be aware of if changing the order. The Living Land adventure contains the most advice about basic mechanics and getting started within the game, and also the most information about High Lords and the invasion in general. It's the longest adventure, 3 acts, but it takes time to introduce key concepts of the game. If the group is already familiar with those rules and concepts, those acts play more quickly than intended. The Isle adventure is the second longest and leverages a setting that most players are familiar with, medieval fantasy. The players take a more traditionally heroic role here as well, which sets a contrast against what follows. Each of the other cosms are only one act, each and build upon what's different about the cosm's invasion and play experience. Pan Pacifica is especially grisly, with a high chance that every character may perish, so it's placed between 2 adventures where the characters are stronger than the world laws or equipment. The Tharkold adventure introduces the rules for chases and vehicles, which may come up again during the Nile Empire adventure. These concepts aren't covered in depth again if they've been introduced in an earlier adventure. So basically, it's a good idea to kind of play them in order, basically, is what it's saying. But if you've already played, if you've played before, maybe you played one of the other quick start, then you can probably, you could probably still do the Living Land one a little quicker, even though it's 3 acts. Additional materials. Check the Ulisses website for enhanced materials for these adventures. including frequently asked questions and pre-filled character sheets for all the default heroes. Yeah, definitely check those out. So, Dramatis Personae. Each adventure features a cast of 6 pre-generated heroes called Dramatis Personae. Players may change the names and genders of their characters freely, but the basic character concept and any relationship should remain intact. Each hero is a legal starting character with 2 exceptions. Starting equipment varies wildly depending on the circumstances of the adventure, and the character doesn't start play as a Storm Knight. Transcendence. Normally, the heroes in Torg Eternity have already experienced their moment of crisis before starting play. In Day 1, players get to experience this turning point firsthand. As they go about their normal daily lives, the characters haven't unlocked the incredible abilities they'll have as Storm Knights. They are talented, even destined for greatness, but they aren't heroes yet. That means that at the beginning of the adventure, the characters don't start with any possibilities. Players still draw a hand of destiny cards. Some attributes, skills, or perks may be tied to the character's transcendence into the Storm Knight. Such abilities are underlined and inside brackets. Once the character has a moment of crisis, those abilities immediately unlock, and the character gains her starting possibilities, usually 3, but perhaps more depending on perks. If the character was rolling a test when she transcended, one of those new possibilities may be spent on the test. Moment of crisis. The transformation into a Storm Knight occurs once the character puts herself at risk to help someone else or to take direct action into the fight of the possibility raiders. Once a hero steps up, the possibility energies flood into her, converting her into a more adventurous and powerful version of herself. Be on the lookout for opportunities to trigger the moment of crisis as soon as the player does something heroic. Immediately describe the influx of power and energy and any physical transformations that accompany the change. Each adventure includes multiple opportunities for crisis in the opening scenes. Set any characters who haven't transformed yet closer to these events so they have the first opportunity to react. In an adventurous realm like Isle or the Nile Empire, offer the option to narratively describe the character's crisis if it hasn't come after the first scene. The player doesn't have to use this option, but the game is more fun with Storm Knights. In harsher realms such as Orosh and Pan Pacifica, let the moment come naturally or not at all. Nice. I like that kind of the idea of sort of your origin stories as a Storm Knight. Makes it interesting, and maybe you could if you're more familiar with Torg, you maybe want to allow players to kind of create their own characters that are going to have their moment of crisis as you play through these, which is cool. I think that's a cool idea for a campaign. Wounds. Another possible trigger for a moment of crisis is when the character suffers 1 or more wounds. The character has a choice: accept the damage or fight back to try to negate it. Fighting back causes the transformation described above, and the character may use possibilities to soak damage, including the damage from the attack. Using different characters. I think it's about to talk about what I was just talking about. It's possible to run each adventure with custom characters or treat one like an origin story for heroes intended in a normal campaign. There are a few challenges to this approach. Some heroes available for normal play aren't from Core Earth at all. Such characters might work as spies embedded in the High Lord's troops, or advanced scouts who made their way to Core Earth in advance of the Maelstrom Bridges. The real issue is such characters already know what's going on, which changes the tone of the adventure. As an origin story, Orosh and Pan Pacifica are especially harsh. The entire group is likely to die horribly or to disappear forever. On the other hand, heroes who emerge from the stories as Storm Knights feel particularly special. Finally, some encounters are tailored to the skills, abilities, and especially the starting equipment defined for the default Dramatis Personae. The inclusion or loss of a particular relationship, spell, skill, or weapon might significantly change the adventure's difficulty or require some improvisation to keep things flowing. So, those are all great points, and I think that that maybe then as a GM you would want to use this as a for your own way to kind of get familiar with the adventures, maybe to introduce some players to kind of get them right in the middle of it, and then you can allow them to create characters after that, or if they really like the character to kind of continue on with it, or you could play it as a a 7 session or maybe more, depending on how long each of these takes, but 7 adventure campaign just to introduce the campaign to players, and then from there you start a full campaign, which then people kind of know what each cosm has to offer more or less, and decide where they want their character to go from there. So that's pretty cool. Starting card hands. Each player draws a hand of 4 destiny cards at the beginning of a day 1 adventure, even though the invasion may not have started. These characters are still fated to become heroes. Since a character can't play possibilities, she also can't play drama or hero cards that are spent as possibilities. Players aren't dealt a cosm card at the beginning once the Maelstrom Bridge lands and the axiom washes from the invading cosmos begins changing the world. Then players are dealt cosm card. Some adventures call for cosm cards to be dealt in the second scene, not the first, especially if the cards assume social or environmental factors that take a little more time to develop. After day 1. Although each adventure is self-contained, the outcome of each may continue to affect the possibility wars. A player who becomes attached to a specific character from one of the cosms may choose to continue that Storm Knight's career in a regular campaign, assuming he survives. More likely, surviving heroes might show up as useful background characters later. It adds an extra layer of interest when players interact with one of these survivors elsewhere. Likewise, these Storm Knights are a useful resource when background characters are needed as contacts or even for a romance. The adventures themselves may also serve as an inspiration for different tales happening at roughly the same time, exploring the fates of different groups of people closer to the Maelstrom Bridges or even farther away, and how the change in location affects their chances of survival. That's a good idea too. I like the idea of letting the players play these characters, and then you sort of start your full campaign, and then you use those characters that survived as NPCs, Storm Knights, for later. I like that idea a lot. It still gives the players a tie to those characters, even though the characters might not, their new characters might not have a tie to them, or it gives you a reason to tie those characters in somehow too. So I like that suggestion as well. Padre says there are 10 acts, probably 10 to 20 sessions of play. That's a lot. Acts and scene breaks. Each adventure is split into sections called acts and scenes. This isn't a stylistic conceit, it's a mechanical necessity. Scenes matter because destiny cards don't refill until the scene changes, even if a scene includes multiple encounters. Some abilities may only be used once a scene. An act is meant to be approximately 1 full game session, and possibilities and cosm cards reset between acts, so the break is important. Sometimes an act may take more time, specifically if the group really digs into role-playing a scene, or far less if they find a shortcut or pass over all the optional activities. There are 2 main ways to handle it when an act doesn't end precisely when a game session would. One method is to perform the reset exactly when the act ends, and then store each player's cards and possibilities, so next game session the act may pick up exactly where it left off. Take time for a short break between the act to allow players to grab snacks or discuss the event so far, and deal new cards and reset each player's possibility after the break. Alternatively, the act can be artificially extended or shortened by a scene. This method works best if there's only time for one more scene or only part of a scene. The rest that accompanies a new act then comes at the beginning of the next game session as usual. Either way works, just so long as the act reset happens sometime. Which method is better depends entirely upon the exact timing and the personal taste of the group. So that'll make sense. So it looks like we're getting into the Living Land Dramatis Personae. So here there are 6 characters, and then we get into it. So since this one is the longest, we started late today. We'll save this for Wednesday. But let's go ahead and look at the day 1 characters. So here are some day 1 characters. looks like there are, these are all of the characters from the other book, from the adventure, I would assume, because it looks like there are many, many pages here. So, so there are, there's got to be at least 30 or 40. So there are a ton of them here. Wade Bridges. So this one is already a Storm Knight, looks like. Oh no, it still says nothing. No clearance level, so maybe not. Oh, so each of these are like 2 pages. So yeah, so it looks like there's 40 characters. But, so, it's great that it's got all these PDFs, so you can just print them out or, cut them out for online play or whatever. Then I wanted to go and check over the GM screen, which again is on Pay What You Want right now. So you can go grab this, and it's going to give you, this screen, which you can use these images for your online games. It's just got the background, so it's just kind of cool, couple cool images. But you can also use, obviously, the actual GM screen part. And for example, when I use Fantasy Grounds, because that's what I have the most experience with, so when I use Fantasy Grounds, I'll often take the GM screen, because obviously you don't need to use it as an actual GM screen, but I will take the main pages, and I will either, for Fantasy Grounds, I usually will copy, just kind of crop the image and import it as an image. And then Fantasy Grounds has a thing called a hotkey bar, and so I'll throw these GM screen pages as an image into those hotkey bars, and when I need them, I just pop them up. So it's still very useful, even if you're not running a game in person. Having all these tables are still going to be very useful to your game as a game master. And then also part of the GM screen is the archetypes. So these archetypes are looks like that's an alpha clearance archetype. So these are more powerful characters than the basis. The Unstoppable Cop. Yeah. Let's see. This is say how much. Oh, it doesn't have XP. Oh no, alpha clearance are the first ones. The beta are the second. That would make sense. So here's a bunch: Cyber Witch, Realm Runner, Renegade Priest. All the usual. I think we've seen in multiple places. So if you want to, if you're gonna play, if you have another adventure that you want to run with pre-generated characters after the Day 1 adventures, you can use these. I think some of the other free pay what you want adventures that we have out there from the previous Gen Cons, those adventures are for full characters. I know with those some have pre-gens with those as well, but if they don't, you could use these ones. So there's a bunch. There's a Dinos Optant, Primitive Hunter, the Masked Crusader, the Eclectic Inventor, the Monster Hunter, the Relic Raider, Electric Samurai, Hardboiled Detective, Resistance Fighter, and the Scrapper. So I've seen some of these before in other places, and so they're useful, in any game where your player hasn't played before, so you just want them to play a pre-gen without going through. Although I really found that Torg Eternity was very simple to make a character, very fast, and it was nice having a simple creation session. So I think that's about gonna wrap it up for today. We will come in on Wednesday and we'll talk more about that First Living Land adventure, and we'll really get into it, get into the spoilers, and maybe once a week we'll do another adventure. So hopefully, if you guys are GMs and you want to talk about them, please join me and ask your questions, and we'll see what we can discover about the Torg Eternity together. So go check out the website, We've got Stay at Home and Play Torg Eternity, a new initiative we're working on where we're released the Up the Creek Quick Start as pay what you want, the drama deck as pay what you want, and there are a ton of adventures that are also pay what you want, and some Infiniverse exchange content some people have put up as pay what you want, so definitely check those out as well. There's new cards that people have put out, adventures, all kinds of stuff, so go check all of that out. So with that, I'm Robert Aducci, and I'm here for Ulisses Spiel, Ulisses International, and we'll see you again on Wednesday. Thanks for stopping by.